Anurag, good afternoon or good morning, depending on where you are. Really good to see you. How are you?
Doing well, Martin. Thank you. Thanks for having me on today.
It's a pleasure. Well, look, for the benefit of the audience, we always like to ask the question of, if you wouldn't mind just giving a little bit of a background on yourself, your background, and what led you to business value consulting.
Sure. It was a little bit of happen chance that I landed into this world of business value. So it was my first job after business school, a job at SAP's value engineering team, which for many practitioners was the starting point of their value journey. Then I'm eternally grateful for that experience at SAP. This was when I was still out of Asia Pacific. So I've got very familiar with customers and the markets over there. I had a small stint at Deloitte Strategy Consulting after that. Different experience, but very enriching in its own way. And then I was called by Adobe to start their business value journey, first in APAC and then scale it globally. So it was quite remarkable how business value was at the forefront of turning the dials of a 4 billion company, tripling the ARR to 12 billion in 7 years during the time that I
Oh,
was there. Business value was at the forefront of that transition, which became a Harvard case study later on as well. So that was all about Adobe. And then alongside that is when me and my family actually relocated to the Bay Area, which is where we live now, so the San Francisco Bay Area. And Salesforce came calling shortly after that. So spent a couple of years with their very established BVS group, as it's called. Ton of great learning over there on very mature practices of BVS. And then Red Hat gave me a call 5 years ago when they wanted me to come and start the function for them. So yet again, building value function from scratch.
that serious business value pedigree, I have to say. I mean, some of the who's who names in the space. I mean, having started at SAP is, I guess, considered one of the cradles of modern business value consulting or value selling as well. How was kind of cutting your teeth there? Because that was your first job out of university, right, or out of business school?
That's right. Yeah, it was a lot of drinking from the fire hose early on, I'll admit.
Yes.
Because I never heard of value engineering ever before. And later I was told that it is not something that software invented. It's been a concept that's been popular in manufacturing before.
Hmm.
And I2 Technologies was one of the first before SAP and Oracle as the big boys who brought it into consultative selling of software. So that was new, as was sales. Broadly speaking, technology sales was new. So there was a lot of new learning for me uh, at SAP. But yeah, a lot of very, the learning there was very strong because I got to interact with seasoned sales professionals, very mature sales leaders as well, folks like Bill McDermott, who now all of us know as one of the biggest supporters of business value in a CEO capacity. So yeah, that was a very enriching experience.
And having started your career out of JPAC, right? What and then having transferred over to the Bay Area, are there any differences in how different cultures utilize business value or value engineering, more from how you adapt to the buyer, the buyer needs?
For sure, yeah, there is. I would say there is some aspects of the craft that translate geographies, but there are a few very important ones that one would be presumptuous to not consider those cultural nuances, especially as you said from buyer perspective, right? Now, business value is all about just like beauty lies in the eyes of the beholder. I keep saying that value lies in the eyes of whoever is buyer, right? So the way you approach it in terms of the cultural nuance is the art of the craft, right? The science, the numbers, the storytelling, all that aside, the actual art is how comfortable do you make the buyer about the value that you're trying to convince them of, how you're able to build that trust with them, and everything that's going on today around AI, for example, right? I will want to see how AI can help you build trust at a personal level. I think that's a part of just humanity that
Mm.
should remain sacrosanct. But I think that was something else, right? That, so going back to your question, right? That is the part that is the nuance, is the art of the craft, which I'm very careful of, especially if I'm starting business in a new geography, or right now my job at Red Hat, if we are trying to do business in different parts of the world, we got to be very careful and cognizant of how we approach the fundamentals of business value, but the last mile execution has to be very
Mhm.
oriented towards the needs of the market.
I think that's a really good point. In addition, also the nature of the relationship with the champion culturally may be very different. In some markets, a champion is your friend, so to speak, right? They kind of sit across both sides of the table supporting you, and so you build a very close relationship with that champion. In other markets, there may be more of an intended barrier between the two, and navigating the differences must be very important.
Absolutely. I have actually have a pretty interesting anecdote on that point. So a few years ago, again, this is during the time when I was at Adobe, we were trying to sell Adobe's marketing solutions to an airline in Japan, All Nippon Air ANA. And our champion over there was a supporter, but the culture in Japan is very different. As you said, it's
Yeah.
not. It's a little bit more formal than what you would expect in America, right? So that was new for me, but having gained the trust of the champion through the quality of the work that me and my team produced, it came to a point where, as we finished up the engagement and we took the business case up through the leadership chain of All Nippon Air and we got really good feedback, the champion was so pleased that he actually organized a farewell dinner of sorts to commemorate the
Wow.
closure of the business engagement. And it was not, just we'll take you to a coffee shop, and it was like a proper sit down Japanese dinner, which I understand is a rarity for
Yes.
somebody from the outside like me who's coming into the country. So they embraced the function, and the output was so powerful for them that it kind of transcended the formality of the relationship.
That's pretty special. You must have built a very good relationship there.
Thank you.
You said something a moment ago that I love, that I'm literally going to steal and put it on some LinkedIn post or a t-shirt, which is value is in the eye of the beholder, right? That's so true, right? Because at the end of the day, value selling or value engineering is establishing what is valuable about solving a certain pain to a certain company that is worth buying your service, right? And then I'd love you to dive deeper into the process of how do you identify and establish the highest priority value for an organization, a persona.
Yeah, a great question, Martin. So it's something that at Red Hat we've been investing a lot of time and energy from my own business value team. So we have, just to set up the lay of the land for us, right? I started from the first hire on the team to now we have a global team of 50 value advisors, consultants, call it what you want. But we are well ingrained into every geography, every segment of the business. But it did not happen overnight for us. So we had to earn our place. And for a $7 billion company to change the way they go to market, it's not just a sales function. Every function around us, including solution engineers, customer success, ecosystem partners, also, we rewrote our corporate strategy. Our strategy office, they were so impressed with the work that we had done that they rewrote our outward facing strategy, right? So the work that we've done has been so powerful. But again, all of this has been built on the premise of your question, which is how do you elevate the conversation to talk about business value and not just feature function? There's a place and time to have the feature function conversation. But then, as Red Hat realized 5 years ago, your business is going to plateau if you're only talking that, right? So, for organizations who are hungry for newer markets, adoption, ARRs, right? This is the one of the ways to get there. So we have done a lot of work, not just ourselves, uncovering the business value. We've also trained Red Hat sellers. 3,000 sellers went through our structured program that we have with our enablement team. So I actually share KPIs with the enablement leader at Red Hat, and we invest a lot of time on scale coming from value skills, on asking the right questions, as you said. It's all about doing deep discovery, asking the right questions, going beyond what customers will want to offer you as their immediate pain point. You got to go 2 levels, 3 levels deeper to really hone in on what is the business challenge that they have, because technology is just an enabler of a solution for it.
Kudos to the CRO and CEO to put that. Now, that's a bold move, right? To retrain or train 2,000, 3,000 sellers. Wow,
Absolutely. I've been blessed with that kind of sponsorship. It's something that I tested for before taking the role, because
makes sense.
been on this journey before. It is one of the table stakes, right? For any value function to be successful, is to
Indeed.
have that very strong C-level support behind it.
Every single business value consultant or value engineer I've spoken to says exactly the same thing. And they've been on both sides. They've joined organizations where the CEO thought it was a good idea, but maybe didn't really understand what needed to happen from a transformation perspective and just floundered. Whereas others, it was that kind of sponsorship and it just, it grew wonderfully and it had the kind of impact that you've shared at Red Hat and others. In your line of work, who are the best people to sell to? Who do you most enjoy selling, having the sales conversations to? Are there specific roles, specific titles, specific personalities that you think exhibit the kinds of characteristics that you want to have a buying partner?
Great question. A couple of months ago, we hosted Red Hat's biggest annual customer event called Red Hat Summit, and we did it in Boston this year. I actually met a senior executive. I'm not going to give names, but chief digital officer for one of Korea's largest conglomerates. And this person is young, energetic, is the change maker in that otherwise old school organization. So actually, those are the personalities, those are the personas that for a value champion, right? You kind of look for them, because old school company running into issues, but there is somebody who's a change maker, and what better than you're building the case for change with them, right? So there's an
For
immediate
sure.
vision match, because they're trying to do something different, and you empower them as your champion, right? So I've enjoyed working with all kinds of buyers, but those kinds of buyers is what sticks out.
I'll speak to it from my own career. So Simbi is relatively short in its life right now. My previous company is completely different from my previous company. My previous company was a digital health company, and we sold primarily to insurers. So today I sell with Simbi, we sell to sales teams, right? VPs of sales, CROs, sales reps as well, BVCs. They're generally, what is the main characteristic of salespeople? They're optimists. They're positive. They are great people to engage with. It's fun, it's exciting, it's energetic. You live the highs and lows in the sales cycle. Before I sold to insurers, they're pessimists by default, right? Because they need to see the risk in everything. And it's a very, very, very different scenario. But in all realness, one of the things I do love about selling to salespeople, especially experienced value sellers, is that they know how to buy because they know how to sell. So they already share with me their pain. Don't have to go through a proper full med pick exercise, because the good ones they'll give it up, right? Because it becomes a true partnership. Do you find that that kind of scenario depending on the persona that you're dealing with?
Absolutely, and in fact, I can relate to that. Even if you think about change internally for an organization of Red Hat scale, right? So if I'm trying to sell the concept of business value to a new organization, which maybe technology first organization, technology leaders, like founders, right, things of that nature, like even if it is a smaller startup, right? So
Mm.
them to not think of business value as a change agent for them, I think is a miss.
Yes.
Because even if you think your technology is super important, mission critical, it has all the bells and whistles, end of the day, your buyers are not going to sign the check just looking at the features and functions. Yes, it may be good for an evening conversation to entertain them, but when you put a check in front of them, right, they are going to balk at it, right? They need to know what's in it for them. How does it directly relate to their strategic goals and their business KPIs? So I think that's the interesting conversation there.
At what stage in a company's life cycle? Because you seem to have always worked for very large companies. Red Hat is very large, but probably one of the smaller ones in comparison. You said Red Hat's at about 7 billion in revenue. Imagine a Series A company, right? They maybe have 5 people on their sales team. They've just hired their first VP of sales. Is it too early to bring in a value function?
Good question. I think it depends on the need that they have for it. In the sense, I talk about it as symptoms and cures for it. So if they are high growth startup at that early stage, and they're really in the middle of the foundations of a product market fit, things of that nature, then it may be a bit too early. Nothing stopping them from embracing the concept itself, right?
In
The
sales?
website, the website,
Sure.
for example, right? Or the calls that their BDRs are making, right? The pitches that they're making, right? Those from a scale perspective could still benefit from value messaging. They need not have a full-time value consultant at that early stage. As long as the VP of sales, for example, who's new, who's had some experience with this, they can just provide the guidance on the value messaging, that's enough. I think it's an overkill at that early of a stage to have an in-house value function, but as it evolves, right, as they test out the value messaging, as they find traction on this, there will be a stage there they will think of a need to invest. I was joking with somebody else the other day. It's almost like customer success, right? Everybody in a company should be doing customer success, right?
Yes,
Theoretically,
absolutely.
there's still a need for a customer success function, right? Because you hire for that skill, you compensate them for that skill, and it is their day job to constantly think like that. It's the same with value consulting. Now, you could argue that, yeah, everybody should be talking business value. Fantastic. But then what's the reinforcement for that on a large deal where you need the specialization and then you need the functions around it to be all aligned towards the concept?
What would you say is a one or the three criteria or the threshold for a company to say, right, we need to bring in a value consulting practice? You know, it could be one person, but just that role. What makes a company need it?
Yeah, I think it's a mix of a few things. One is the maturity of the company itself in terms of its evolution. Probably Series B or Series C is a good sweet spot, especially as
For
you
proper
touch
scale?
proper scale. Also, as you're touching, let's say ARR for you is getting material. Let's say 50 to 100 million ARR, right? Is again another good indicator of you having the need, because at that stage the deal sizes for you also are significant enough. So the margins on a deal, right? I look at it from unit economics from that perspective. The margins on the deal are enough for you to justify a headcount dedicated to this, because claim to fame for business value people often is we expand the size of the deal because we have a bigger, larger conversation, right? Now, for you to expand a 10K deal to 12K, the 2K differential is not enough to justify having a full-time business value person. But if you're talking deal sizes 100K, 200K, right, and you're able to expand that, that becomes material.
For sure. It's a really fascinating conversation because I know a lot of companies in the A to B space are considering it, right? The concept of business value is making its way into earlier and early stages of businesses. I think for the reasons that you said, the market's moving very quickly. Now, is there a consideration? Does it matter how complex your value proposition is in needing
It does. That's the other part, right? Is what are you actually selling? Who your buyers are? How many buyers are involved? Right? All of those are
stakeholders? Mm.
stakeholders that you need to convince it. There's also an element of industries here, right? What are the verticals that you're selling to? So just recently, Red Hat asked me to take on additional responsibilities for some of our emerging industries go to market, which I think is a very interesting combination of bringing
Mm.
business value and industries with some synergies there, right? Especially when you look at AI and you're trying to sell AI. AI is all about selling based on use cases, and those use cases have to be vertically oriented. And in those vertically oriented use cases, yes, what's the biggest question out there? What's the ROI of AI? And that happens pretty organically if you're approaching it from this step by step methodology.
Yeah, we're seeing a lot of growth in the number of companies that are pure AI players as customers of Simbi for that very reason. They all share similar kinds of outcomes, right? Operational efficiencies, productivity increases, but they struggle still in translate those into actual financial value beyond just we can help you cut your workforce, which is never the nicest outcome, nor should it be, right? Because there's a lot of less about reduction, more about growth, right? And so it's an interesting space now that we're in. Like, how does value engineering evolve with the just sheer and yeah, the sheer growth and explosion of not just AI companies, but companies now bringing in AI capabilities, and so the nature of their outcomes has also expanded, right?
For sure, yeah. I look at AI from three lenses actually. One is, are you selling AI as a solution area from your organization? The second lens is using AI for amplification or augmentation of BVCs, right? So I'm
Mhm.
actively doing that with my own value team. And then a third very interesting layer, which actually bleeds a little bit into Symbase land, is using AI to scale value to the field.
Yeah,
So, that's where again, I'm being very pragmatic about you cannot keep adding headcount. That's not the smartest way to scale. You got to have partnerships with, as I mentioned earlier, on the skill side and then on the automation side, the tooling side as well.
totally.
And AI absolutely supercharges the tooling side because that's where you can spread the goodness of the BVC work, analyzing those in-depth engagements,
Yeah.
simplifying it, and then you can spread it using AI to the field.
Why we're excited from Simbi is that this is one of those spaces, and you mentioned or alluded to it earlier, the human in the loop nature of value selling. It cannot be fully replaced by AI, but AI can absolutely supercharge the abilities of a sales rep by enabling them to effectively cover more pipeline with a higher win rate. Ultimately, that's the goal, right?
Absolutely.
Brilliant. Anurag, thank you so much. This has been a really, really engaging conversation. I do have two relatively uncomfortable questions for you as as we wrap up. The first one is, how long have you been working in business value? About 14 years?
Close to 20 years now.
20 years. Well, you just look a lot younger than at least in 20 years. Well, okay. So surely you must have worked with some pretty phenomenal people. Who's the best value engineer you've ever worked with?
Whew. Best value engineer. There's a lot, actually. There's a lot, but a lot that I learned from my seniors at SAP early on, going over to Adobe. I will give you a name from Adobe actually because I learned a significant amount of business value skills. Also, that's the time when I started to manage and lead global functions. So I learned a lot from this gentleman on that side also. His name is Michael Sarelnik. He's now retired, living a happy retired life. But yeah, I think he would probably be right up there in my book.
Lovely. And in terms of sales reps, surely you must have partnered with quite a few great talents. Who's the best sales rep you've worked with and why?
Oh, this is a trickier one.
You can name more than one. Go ahead.
Oh, actually, there's a lot. I mean, we'll probably run out of things, but I have high regard for what SAP did, what they did in that. And I've seen, some of the reps who were sales reps at that time, right? The success that they have now had in the last 20 years. Some of them are
Mm,
actually CROs at different organizations, and
I can
one threat for them has been business value. It's not a misnomer, right? That if you are having a value conversation and you're fully embracing it as a sales rep, success is no bounds for you. I was literally at Red Hat's President's Club last month, and I was joking with our head of Americas that looking around us, everybody who had qualified for club, they have been one of the strongest supporters and users of my team and
Makes
business bank,
sense.
right? So it is such a strong correlation, it's hard to ignore.
No, and we actually see that as well. With all due respect to all the sales reps at USINB, there is a correlation. I'm not going to directly say causation, but there is always a correlation between the ones that are the super users of our product and those that are making President's Club. And it's not causation. It's because the best reps will always identify the tools that make them better and use them in the best possible way. All right, I'll be completely honest.
For sure.
Anurag, thank you so much for your time today. Really enjoyed it.
Thank you, Martin. Thanks for having me.